planet Kethmora was dead. Not the poetic kind of dead, where you could still find some scrubby plants clinging to life in a canyon somewhere, or bacteria thriving in a thermal vent. No, this was the real deal. Sterile, silent, and utterly devoid of anything that could be considered living. The kind of dead that made you wonder what cosmic catastrophe had swept through this place and decided to be extra thorough about it, which, naturally, made it the perfect place for archaeologists. Dr. Ixleth stood at the entrance of what his team had been calling the structure for the past 6 months, because giving it a more exciting name felt presumptuous when you hadn't actually found anything interesting inside yet. His compound eyes tracked across the seamless metallic surface. Mandibles clicking in a rhythm that his colleagues had learned meant he was thinking hard about something. "Still nothing?" Ulokan asked from behind him, the massive reptilian's voice a low rumble that carried easily in the thin atmosphere. The Quix warrior had been asking some variation of this question every day for weeks, and honestly, nobody could blame him. Standing guard over a bunch of scientists while they measured rocks and took samples of dust wasn't exactly what he'd signed up for when he joined the Galactic Union military escort program. "Nothing," Ixleth confirmed, his translator rendering his clicks and whistles into flat, emotionless galactic common. "Every scan shows the same result. No power signatures, no energy readings, no biological traces. The structure is inert." "So we're still poking at a very expensive piece of rubble," Ulokan said, shifting his weight in that way large predators do when they're bored and looking for something to bite. "Wonderful!" Pixun skittered over on multiple legs, their torso twisted at an angle that would have made a human nauseous just watching it. The Octari engineer was carrying enough scanning equipment to stock a small laboratory, most of it jury-rigged together in ways that probably violated several safety regulations. "I've been analyzing the molecular composition of the outer walls," they announced, their voice high and rapid. "The material is definitely precursor in origin, Ulmathi, based on the degradation patterns and isotope ratios." "We established that 4 months ago," Ixleth said, not unkindly. Pixun had a habit of rediscovering things the team already knew, usually because they'd been too focused on some minute technical detail to attend the briefings. "Yes, but what I also found," Pixun continued, undeterred, "is that the structure isn't degraded at all. The isotope ratios suggest it should be approximately 11,000 years old, but the actual physical state of the material is pristine, as if it was built yesterday." That made Ixleth's mandibles stop clicking. "That's impossible." "I'm aware," Pixun said cheerfully. "And yet, here we are, standing in front of an impossibility. My favorite kind of scientific problem." Ulokan snorted, a sound that came out like steam escaping from a radiator. "Your favorite kind of problem is the kind that doesn't involve ancient war machines waking up and trying to kill us." "Well, yes, that too," Pixun admitted. The structure itself was imposing in that way only truly ancient architecture could be. Massive blocks fitted together without seams, geometric patterns that seemed to shift depending on what angle you viewed them from, and an entrance that yawned open like a mouth that had forgotten how to close. They'd sent drones inside, of course, lots of drones. The drones had found corridors, chambers, more corridors, and absolutely nothing else of interest. No artifacts, no bodies, no convenient holographic displays explaining what this place was for. Just empty rooms and that persistent, unsettling sense that they were missing something obvious. "The human consultant should be arriving soon," Ixleth said, checking his datapad. The device looked comically small in his chitinous hands. Perhaps a fresh perspective will yield results. Ulakan made a sound that could have been a laugh or could have been him hacking up something unpleasant. With Quicks, it was hard to tell. A human? Yes, because what this expedition needs is someone from a species that's been part of the Galactic Union for all of, what, 30 cycles? Surely they'll solve the mystery that stumped the rest of us. Humans have proven surprisingly adept at xenoarchaeology, Ixaleth said, his tone taking on that particular quality that meant he was about to launch into an academic lecture. Their pattern recognition is exceptional, and their willingness to consider unconventional approaches. You mean their complete disregard for established protocols, Ulokan interrupted, has led to several significant discoveries, Ixaleth finished, refusing to be derailed. Besides, the Union assigned her to us. We don't have much choice in the matter. Pixun, who had been scanning the entrance again, with a device that was beeping in a way that sounded almost accusatory, suddenly perked up. Speaking of which, I'm picking up a transport signature. She's here. Right on cue, a small shuttle descended from the gray sky, kicking up clouds of ancient dust as it settled onto the landing pad they'd established near the excavation site. The cargo ramp lowered with a pneumatic hiss, and outstepped humanity's contribution to their expedition. Kit was not what Ixaleth had expected. He'd worked with humans before. They were methodical, professional, perhaps a bit too enthusiastic about coffee, but generally competent. This human was wearing what appeared to be standard expedition gear, yes, but she'd also somehow managed to make it look rumpled, as if she'd slept in it during the flight. Her hair was pulled back in a messy knot, and she was eating something from a crinkly wrapper that made crunching sounds. "Sorry I'm late," she called out, waving with the hand that wasn't holding her questionable food item. "Transport got delayed at the hub. Something about engine maintenance and cosmic ray shielding, blah, blah, blah. You know how it goes." Ulokan stared at her, then at Ixaleth, then back at her. "This is the expert consultant?" "Kit," she said, extending her hand for the traditional human greeting, before apparently remembering that not all species appreciated having their appendages grabbed by strangers. She withdrew it and settled for an awkward wave instead. "Human xenoarchaeologist, at your service, or at least at your expedition site. You must be the team I've been reading about." "Dr. Ixaleth," the Keptari said, gesturing to himself. "Lead archaeologist. This is Ulokan, our military escort, and Pixun, our technical specialist." "Great, great," Kit said, still chewing whatever was in her mouth. She swallowed, tucked the wrapper into a pocket, because apparently humans just carried their trash around with them, and looked past them at the structure. Her eyes widened. Oh, wow. That's okay. The briefing documents did not do this justice. That's Ulmati work, right? Has to be. Nobody else could get stone to do whatever that pattern is doing." "It's not stone," Pixun said, their voice taking on that eager quality it got when someone showed interest in their technical observations. "It's a crystalline metallic composite that we haven't been able to fully analyze because our equipment keeps giving us contradictory readings." "Huh," Kit said, walking toward the entrance with the kind of casual confidence that made Ulokan's hand drift toward his weapon out of pure protective instinct. "And you've been inside?" "Extensively," Ixaleth said, following after her. "Drones, manned expeditions, comprehensive scanning. The interior is as empty as the exterior is impressive." "Maybe you missed something," Kit said absently, tilting her head as she studied the entrance. "I mean, no offense, but that happens sometimes." You stare at something so long you stop actually seeing it, you know? Ulokan made a noise that suggested he was deeply offended, but couldn't quite articulate why. Kit pulled out what looked like a granola bar. At least, that's what Ixleth's cultural database suggested it was called, and took a bite. Mind if I take a quick look around? I promise I'll be careful and respectful and all that good stuff. By all means, Ixleth said, gesturing toward the entrance. Professional courtesy demanded he give their consultant access to the site, even if he privately doubted she'd notice anything they'd missed. Kit walked toward the entrance, still munching on her snack, datapad in her other hand as she pulled up the preliminary survey reports. She was maybe 3 meters from the threshold when every light in the structure suddenly blazed to life. Not flickered, not gradually, powered up. Blazed. As in instant transition from completely dark to brilliantly illuminated in the span of a heartbeat. Kit froze mid-step, granola bar halfway to her mouth. Behind her, Pixon dropped their scanning equipment with a clatter that sounded extremely expensive. Ulokan's weapon was in his hands before Ixleth even processed what had happened, the plasma rifle charging with a high-pitched whine that did nothing to calm anyone's nerves. Kit said, her voice small in the sudden humming silence that followed. The structure was alive now, not in a metaphorical sense, but genuinely, literally alive. Lights pulsed along the walls in patterns that hurt to follow. Holographic displays flickered into existence throughout the visible corridors, showing symbols in a language nobody recognized. Somewhere deep inside, machinery that had been silent for millennia was waking up, stretching, remembering what it was built to do. "Nobody move," Ulokan ordered, his rifle trained on the entrance as if he could shoot the building into submission if it made any sudden moves. "Did I do that?" Kit asked, looking down at herself as if she might suddenly discover she'd been carrying some kind of ancient activation device this whole time and just hadn't noticed. Ixleth's mind was racing through possibilities, discarding them as quickly as they formed. Proximity sensors? But they'd walked past this entrance hundreds of times. Temporal activation? Ridiculous. Random chance? Even more ridiculous. The structure had been dormant for thousands of years and just happened to wake up the moment the human arrived? "Back away from the entrance," he said, his voice steady despite the way his internal organs were doing interesting things with his sense of equilibrium. Slowly, no sudden movements. Kit took a step backward. The lights intensified. Another step. More holographic displays materialized, these ones showing what looked like mathematical equations? No, wait. They were changing, symbols shifting and reforming into, "Is that teaching itself?" Pixon whispered, their voice filled with the kind of awe usually reserved for religious experiences. "It's adapting, learning how to communicate with us." Kit took another step back and bumped into Ulokan, who caught her by the shoulders with one massive hand, while keeping his rifle trained on the entrance with the other. "Stay behind me, human." "Kit," she said automatically. "My name is Kit, and I really don't think I did anything special. I just walked up to it like everyone else must have." "Nobody else made it light up like a festival display," Ulokan growled. Ixleth was running scans, his datapad going absolutely berserk with readings that contradicted themselves every other second. Power output was climbing, not dangerously, but measurably. The structure was drawing energy from somewhere. Nowhere their instruments could detect, which was somehow more disturbing than if it had been pulling power from an obvious source. "We need to establish a perimeter," Ulokan said, already activating his comlink to call for backup. "Lock down the site. Get reinforcements." A sound echoed from within the structure. Not a mechanical sound, though there were mechanical components to it. Not an organic sound, though it had qualities that suggested something alive had made it. It was music and language and mathematics all woven together, and it made Ixleth's translator implant do something that felt deeply uncomfortable inside his auditory processing centers. Then the holographic displays all synchronized, symbols locking into place, and a message appeared in perfect, flawless, galactic common. "Welcome, Inheritor. We have been waiting." The four of them stared at the message hovering in the air like it had every right to be there, which, technically, it did. This was its building, after all. But that didn't make the glowing letters any less unsettling, especially since they'd appeared in a dead language that had somehow taught itself modern galactic common in approximately 30 seconds. "Inheritor?" Pixun said, their voice climbing an octave. "Inheritor of what? Who's an inheritor?" Ulo Khan's rifle was still raised, though he'd shifted his aim slightly away from the entrance and toward the general concept of danger itself. "This is a trap. Has to be. Ancient defense systems, pre-programmed responses." "Defense systems don't usually welcome people," Kit pointed out, though she didn't sound particularly confident about that assessment. She'd stopped mid-chew on her granola bar, which honestly seemed like the most reasonable response to ancient alien architecture suddenly developing opinions about visitors. Ixleth was cycling through every piece of precursor research he'd ever read, which was considerable, and coming up empty. The Ulmati had been extinct for thousands of years. Their technology was advanced, yes, but it didn't just wake up and start conversations. That wasn't how any of this worked. "We should retreat," he said, making the difficult decision that preservation of life outweighed scientific curiosity. "Regroup, analyze the data we've collected, and approach this systematically." Another message appeared, this one directly beneath the first. "Please do not leave. This facility has significant information to share." "Oh, good," Ulo Khan said flatly. "It can hear us. That's not creepy at all." Kit had that expression humans got when they were working through a problem. Brow furrowed, mouth slightly open, eyes distant. "Wait, it said inheritor, singular, not inheritors, plural. So it's talking to one of us specifically." She looked at Ixleth. "You're the team lead. Has to be you, right?" "Logical assumption," Ixleth agreed, though something about that felt wrong. The timing had been too precise. The structure hadn't activated when he'd approached. It had activated when a holographic figure materialized in the entrance. Not human, not Keptari, not any species currently. Catalogued in the Galactic Union database. Tall, easily 3 meters, with proportions that suggested bipedal movement, but an elegance that made every gesture look rehearsed. Its skin, or what passed for skin in a hologram, seemed to shift between states of matter, as if it couldn't quite decide whether it wanted to be solid or energy. An Ulmati. Had to be. This was what the precursors had looked like. "Greetings," the figure said, its voice somehow both ancient and contemporary. "I am a guide construct, programmed to assist inheritors in accessing this facility's resources. My creators anticipated this moment, though they could not predict when it would occur." "Creators," Ixleth said, finding his voice. "The Ulmati." "Correct," the hologram confirmed, inclining its head in what might have been acknowledgement. "This facility is one of many constructed across multiple galaxies. Each serves as a repository of knowledge, biological samples, and technological specifications. Access is restricted to those carrying specific genetic markers." Pixon made a sound like air escaping from a punctured seal. Genetic markers? You're saying this is locked by DNA? A simplified explanation, but functionally accurate, the guide construct said. The Ulmathi encoded specific sequences and distributed them across numerous developing species. A long-term investment in the future of biological diversity. Ulokan lowered his rifle slightly, though his posture remained combat-ready. Why would they do that? What's the point of scattering genetic passwords around the galaxy? To ensure knowledge survives, the construct said simply. The Ulmathi understood that no single species, no matter how advanced, persists indefinitely. By distributing access keys across multiple evolutionary lines, they increased the probability that their work would be discovered and utilized by worthy successors. Worthy, Ixleth repeated, his mandibles clicking. And how, exactly, is worthiness determined? The hologram turned, and Ixleth felt the full weight of its attention focus on him. Then, smoothly, it shifted that focus away from him entirely. To Kit. The genetic marker has been detected in the individual designated Kit, the construct said. She is recognized as an inheritor and granted full access to facility resources. There was a beat of profound silence. Then Kit said, "Excuse me?" "No," Ulokan said immediately. "Absolutely not. She's human. Humans have been spacefaring for barely 3 decades. There's no possible way." Genetic analysis confirms the presence of Ulmathi marker sequence in her DNA. The construct interrupted, projecting a holographic display that showed double helix structures, highlighted sections, comparative data that scrolled past too quickly for anyone to properly process. The match is precise and unmistakable. Kit had gone very still, the kind of still that suggested her brain was processing information faster than her body could keep up with. "Hold on. You're saying I have alien DNA? Precursor DNA? How is that even? Humans evolved on Earth. We have a complete fossil record. There's no..." The markers were not introduced through direct genetic manipulation. The construct explained with the patience of something that had been programmed to answer this exact question thousands of times. Rather, the Ulmathi scattered biological components throughout multiple systems, microorganisms, viral vectors, amino acid sequences embedded in cometary material. Over millions of years, these components integrated into developing ecosystems, becoming part of the evolutionary process itself. Pixun was frantically taking notes, their multiple limbs flying across their datapad. "So you seeded entire planets with genetic building blocks, hoping they'd eventually produce species that carried your markers?" Hoping is imprecise. Calculating probability and engineering optimal conditions for integration would be more accurate. Ixleth felt something that might have been professional jealousy, or might have been existential confusion, or might have been both things having a fight inside his thorax. Let me understand this correctly. You're claiming that humans who discovered faster-than-light travel by accident while trying to test a failed quantum computer, are the genetic inheritors of the most advanced civilization in known history? One of several inheritor species, the construct corrected. The Ulmathi distributed markers across approximately 200 developing evolutionary lines. Humans are the first to locate this particular facility, but statistically, others will follow. Kit had finished her granola bar at some point during this conversation, apparently deciding that if reality was going to become completely unmoored from anything resembling sense, she might as well have a snack. Okay. So, working hypothesis here. Your creators played the longest game of genetic lottery in history. I happen to have the winning ticket. And now what? What happens next? Access is granted to repository contents, the construct said. Knowledge transfer, if desired, biological samples for analysis and preservation. Technological specifications for equipment, ranging from medical devices to stellar engineering. That's... Ixleth couldn't finish the sentence. That was everything. That was decades of research handed over like a gift basket. That was the kind of discovery that reshaped civilizations. There must be a catch, Ulokan said, because, of course, there was a catch. There was always a catch. The construct paused, and if a hologram could look uncomfortable, this one managed it. There is contextual information that should be shared. The Ulmathi created these facilities as preservation against a specific threat. An enemy species that consumed knowledge rather than generating it. The Ulli. Past tense? Kit asked hopefully. Present tense, the constructee corrected. The Ulli persist. They hunt repositories, destroy knowledge, eliminate inheritors. By activating this facility, you have created a localized energy signature. One they will detect. Ulokan's rifle snapped back up to ready position. How long? Variable. Their nearest known concentration is approximately 6 light-years from this system. Travel time depends on their current technological capabilities, which I cannot assess from this facility. So, somewhere between days and weeks, Pixon translated, their voice gone high and thin. Wonderful. Perfect. We've just rung the dinner bell for ancient, knowledge-eating monsters. Kit looked at the hologram, then at her team, then back at the hologram. You know what? I'm starting to understand why your species left these things locked. The guide construct waited with the infinite patience of something that didn't technically experience time, while the 4 living beings in front of it collectively processed the news that they'd essentially just sent up a flare, saying, "Free knowledge buffet, come and get it," to a species of cosmic predators. Right, Kit said, breaking the silence with that particularly human brand of determination that usually preceded either brilliant solutions or spectacularly bad decisions. So we have options. We can run. We can try to shut this thing down. Or we can... She trailed off, looking at the hologram expectantly. You can accept the knowledge transfer, the construct supplied. The facility is designed to impart information directly to inheritors through neural interface. The process is safe and has been tested across multiple species. Tested, Ulokan repeated. Tested how? Where are these test subjects now? Most became the foundation of their respective civilizations, the construct said, without apparent irony. Though statistically, some were eaten by local predators, died in unrelated accidents, or chose to reject the knowledge entirely and lived quiet lives of agricultural simplicity. That's an unsettling range of outcomes, Pixon observed. Ixleth was pacing, which looked strange when you had an insectoid body structure, but he managed it anyway. His mind was racing through implications, consequences, political ramifications. If we report this to the Galactic Union, and we are obligated to report it, the facility becomes a contested resource. Every member species will claim rights to the knowledge. There will be committees, hearings, legal challenges that could last decades. While the Ulili head straight here to destroy it all, Kit finished. Yeah, that seems like a problem. This is beyond our authority to handle, Ixleth continued, though his voice lacked conviction. He knew how these things went. By the time the Union bureaucracy finished arguing about proper procedures, the Ulili would have turned the entire planet into a crater. Kit was studying the hologram with that peculiar intensity humans got when they were about to do something inadvisable. You said the knowledge transfer is safe. Define safe. No permanent neurological damage, the construct said. Temporary disorientation, sensory adjustment period, and integration time varies by species. For humans, estimated integration period is 6 to 8 hours. And after that, I'd have, what? Everything in this facility uploaded into my brain? Not everything. Core knowledge structures, location data for other facilities, fundamental understanding of Ulmati technology and scientific principles. Specific technical details would remain stored here for reference, but you would possess the framework to access and understand them. Ulocon moved to physically position himself between Kit and the entrance. Absolutely not. We're not letting some ancient computer program rewire a team member's brain based on promises of safety. We evacuate, call for support, and let the Union handle this. The Union can't handle this, Kit said, her voice sharper than it had been. You said it yourself. Committees, hearings, politics. Meanwhile, killer aliens head this way. Someone needs to make a decision that isn't paralyzed by procedure. She looked at Ixlith. You know I'm right. Ixlith wanted to argue. Every instinct trained into him by decades of academic work screamed that this required careful analysis, peer review, proper documentation. You didn't just let ancient alien technology mess with someone's brain because it seemed like a good idea at the time. But she was right. They had time measured in days, maybe less. And if the Ulilis were as dangerous as the construct suggested. I don't like this, he said finally. For the record, I am fundamentally opposed to this course of action. Noted, Kit said. But you're not stopping me. No, Ixlith admitted. I'm not. Pixun was vibrating with nervous energy, limbs twitching in patterns that suggested they were running calculations. If we're doing this, and apparently we are doing this, we should at least take precautions. I can monitor the neural interface, set up emergency shutdown protocols, keep full medical scans running. All acceptable safety measures, the construct agreed. Please follow. The hologram turned and began walking deeper into the facility. After a moment of shared hesitation, the team followed. Kit went first, because apparently getting volunteered for experimental alien brain surgery made you the de facto leader. Ulocon stayed close behind her, rifle ready, scanning every corner like enemies might materialize from the walls. Ixlith and Pixun brought up the rear, the latter still muttering calculations under their breath. The interior of the facility was breathtaking in that way only truly ancient architecture could be. Massive spaces that seemed to defy structural logic. Walls covered in patterns that were simultaneously mathematical proofs and artistic expressions. Lighting that came from no visible source, but illuminated everything perfectly. Holographic displays flickered to life as they passed, showing star charts, biological diagrams, schematics for devices nobody recognized. This is a relatively small repository, the construct said as they walked. Designed for initial contact and basic knowledge transfer. Larger facilities contain comprehensive databases, manufacturing capabilities, and defensive systems. Defensive systems would be useful right about now, Ulocon muttered. This facility has defensive capabilities, the construct said, though they are primarily designed to protect against environmental hazards rather than military assault. The Ulmathi were explorers and teachers, not warriors. Great. So when the warrior species shows up, we can throw scientific papers at them. They entered a circular chamber that looked like someone had tried to build a cathedral and a laboratory at the same time, and somehow succeeded at both. In the center sat a chair, or something chair-adjacent at least. It was clearly designed for sitting, but the proportions were wrong for any current species, and it seemed to be made of a material that shifted between solid and liquid states. The neural interface, the construct announced. Kit, if you would sit, the chair will adapt to your physiology. Kit approached the chair like someone approaching a dog that might or might not be friendly. She reached out, touched the surface, and watched as it rippled under her fingers. Okay, that's deeply weird, but I've seen weirder. She sat down, and the chair immediately began flowing around her, forming support structures, adjusting height and angle. Comfortable? Pixon asked, already setting up monitoring equipment around the chamber. Disturbingly so, Kit admitted. It's like sitting in a really high-tech beanbag chair that knows exactly what my spine needs. The construct moved to stand beside the chair. The transfer process will begin when you're ready. You will experience sensory input from multiple sources simultaneously. This may be disorienting. Try to remain calm and allow the information to integrate naturally. Any other advice? Kit asked. Her hands were gripping the armrests, knuckles white despite her casual tone. Yes, the Almighty left messages for their inheritors. Personal messages, philosophical guidance, warnings. Don't dismiss them as mere sentiment. They chose their words carefully. Kit nodded. Okay, I can do this. Worst case scenario, I become a vegetable. And you all have to explain to the Union how you let a human get lobotomized by a chair. That would be a very awkward report to file, Ixleth agreed, attempting humor despite the tension coiling in his thorax. Initiating transfer, the construct said, and the chair began to glow. Kit's eyes went wide, then wider, then rolled back slightly as the interface activated. Holographic displays materialized around her head, showing neural pathways lighting up, synaptic connections forming. At impossible speeds, information flowing in patterns that looked like data, and lightning and music all woven together. Pixon's equipment was screaming alerts. Her neural activity just spiked. No, wait, it's stabilizing. Brainwave patterns are... I've never seen anything like this. It's like watching someone learn a language by downloading it directly into their... They stopped. Oh, that's exactly what's happening. Kit's body had gone rigid, muscles locked in place, breathing shallow but steady. Her eyes were moving beneath closed lids, tracking something invisible. Occasionally her fingers would twitch, or her lips would move soundlessly, forming words in languages that hadn't been spoken for millennia. How long will this take? Ulokan asked, his voice low. Unknown, the construct said. Human neural architecture is efficient, but the integration process varies by individual. Somewhere between 20 minutes and 2 hours. And if something goes wrong? I will terminate the transfer immediately. However, partial knowledge transfer could result in incomplete understanding of critical concepts. It would be unfortunate. Ixleth watched the displays, wishing he understood half of what they were showing. Kit's brain was being fundamentally altered, information carved into neural pathways, memories that weren't hers becoming part of her cognitive structure. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. 30 minutes passed. Then an hour. Kit remained locked in place, her brain processing thousands of years of accumulated knowledge at a pace that should have been impossible for biological systems. Then, abruptly, the glow faded. The holographic displays winked out. The chair released its hold and returned to its neutral state. Kit's eyes opened. They were the same brown they'd always been, but there was something different in them now, a depth that hadn't been there before, like looking at a familiar room and realizing it had extra dimensions you'd never noticed. Kit? Ixleth asked carefully. Are you yourself? Kit blinked slowly, took a breath, then another. When she spoke, her voice was hoarse. Yeah, I'm me, just more me, with several thousand years of precursor knowledge taking up residence in my head. She looked at her hands like she'd never seen them before. Oh, that's what they meant. The Ulmathi. They didn't die. They didn't go extinct. What happened to them? Pixon asked, leaning forward. Kit looked up, and her expression was equal parts wonder and sadness. They evolved past the need for physical form, became something else, something that exists in the spaces between matter and energy. They left these facilities because they remembered what it was like to be biological, and they wanted to give that gift to whoever came after. And the Ulili? Ulokan asked. Kit's expression hardened. They're coming. And now I know exactly why the Ulmati were so afraid of them. Kit stood up from the chair, testing her balance like someone relearning how to walk. She took a step, then another, movements becoming more confident as her brain finished integrating with her body. Okay, so here's what I know now. The Ulili aren't just knowledge hunters. They're parasites. They consume understanding itself, strip it from species and civilizations, leaving nothing but empty husks behind. Charming, Ulokan said, checking his rifle's charge level. How long until they arrive? Kit closed her eyes, accessing information that now lived somewhere in the back of her skull. Based on the energy signature this facility broadcasts when active, 3 days, maybe 4, if we're lucky. We need to evacuate, Ixleth said immediately. Contact the Union. Establish a defensive perimeter. They'll destroy the facility, Kit interrupted. The Ulili don't just steal knowledge, they obliterate it. Every data crystal, every biological sample, every schematic. They'll turn this entire planet into glass to make sure nothing survives. Pixon's limbs were twitching in agitation. So what do? We can't defend this place with 4 people and 1 rifle. Kit was staring at the walls, at the holographic displays still flickering with data. Her mind was working through possibilities with a speed and clarity that felt new and strange and oddly familiar all at once. The construct said something earlier, about the facility being able to phase, dimensionally phase. The guide construct, which had been standing silently during Kit's recovery, activated again. Correct. This repository can be shifted into a pocket dimension, accessible only to inheritors, a security measure against threats the Ulmati could not directly combat. And that requires what? More genetic authentication? Kit asked. Yes. The phasing protocol demands sustained biometric confirmation from an inheritor. Approximately 6 minutes of continuous genetic verification while the dimensional anchors recalibrate. Ulokan's tactical mind was already seeing the problem. 6 minutes, during which time you'll be vulnerable, locked into whatever mechanism runs the protocol, and if the Ulli arrive before you finish, then I become a very easy target. Yes, I got that part, Kit said. She turned to Ixleth. You need to take everything we've learned and get it back to the Union. Physical samples if possible, but at minimum, all of Pixon's scans and recordings. Someone needs to know this place exists, even if we have to hide it. You're talking like you're not coming with us, Ixleth said, mandibles clicking in distress. Someone has to stay and initiate the phase. That someone has to be me, because I'm the only one with the genetic password. Kit's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking slightly. It's not a suicide mission. Once the facility phases, I phase with it. The Ulili show up, find nothing, and hopefully get bored and leave. Hopefully, Ulokan repeated. You're betting Your life on, hopefully. You have a better plan? Nobody did. The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of impossible choices and inadequate options. Then Pixon said, "What if we make it harder for them? Buy you more time?" "How?" Kit asked. "The facility has defensive systems. You said they're designed for environmental hazards, but weapons are weapons. If we can activate them, rig them to respond to Ulili signatures—" Pixon was already pulling up schematics on their datapad, multitasking across several screens at once. "It won't stop them, but it might slow them down, make them more cautious." Ulo Khan was nodding slowly. "And if we position ourselves at strategic choke points, use the terrain to our advantage, we could hold them off, long enough for the phase to complete." "No," Kit said immediately. "You need to evacuate, all of you. This isn't your fight." "With respect," Ixleth said, his formal tone at odds with the determination in his voice, "that's not your decision to make. We're a team. We found this facility together. If you're staying to protect it, then we're staying to protect you." Kit looked at each of them in turn. The scientist who'd spent his life studying dead civilizations, the warrior who'd signed up to guard researchers from wildlife and equipment failures, the engineer who got excited about impossible readings and contradictory data. None of them had asked for this. None of them deserved to be caught in the crossfire of a war that had started before their species had even evolved. "You're all insane," she said quietly. "Probably," Ulo Khan agreed. "But we're insane together, which counts for something." The next 2 days were a blur of preparation. Pixun worked with the facility's systems, learning how to weaponize environmental controls, how to seal corridors and create kill zones. Ulo Khan mapped defensive positions, calculated firing angles, and requisitioned every piece of equipment his military authorization could access. Ixleth documented everything, recording detailed accounts of what they'd found, what Kit had learned, what was about to happen. Kit spent the time learning to access the knowledge now living in her head. It was like having a library installed directly into her brain, useful, but overwhelming when you accidentally stumbled into the wrong section, and suddenly knew more than you ever wanted to about Ulmati digestive processes. On the morning of the third day, their sensors picked up the first Ulilik signatures dropping out of hyperspace. 3 ships, Ulo Khan reported, studying the tactical display. "Cruiser class, heavy weapons, boarding pods. They're not here to negotiate." "Time until they reach the surface?" Kit asked. 20 minutes, maybe 30 if they're cautious." Kit nodded, moving toward the central chamber where the phasing mechanism was located. "Then we start now. Pixun, are the defenses ready?" "As ready as they're going to be," Pixun said, their voice high with stress. "I've rigged the outer corridors to seal on command, weaponized the environmental systems, and set up proximity alerts. When they breach the perimeter, we'll know." The phasing mechanism was in a chamber even deeper than the neural interface room, a spherical space where gravity seemed more like a suggestion than a rule. In the center floated a crystalline structure that pulsed with inner light, responding to Kit's presence. 6 minutes, she said, placing her hand on the crystal. It was warm, almost alive beneath her palm. "Once I start, I can't stop. If something happens, nothing's going to happen," Ixleth said firmly. "We'll hold them." Kit wanted to believe that. She pressed her palm more firmly against the crystal, and it began to glow brighter, light spreading through the chamber like dawn breaking. The facility responded, systems activating throughout the structure, dimensional anchors beginning their slow, careful recalibration. The construct appeared beside her. Phase sequence initiated. Maintain contact for 5 minutes and 43 seconds. Kit settled in, her hand locked to the crystal, by more than just physical pressure now. The facility was reading her genetics, confirming her identity across thousands of molecular markers, verifying that yes, this was an inheritor, yes, she had the right to make this choice. Ulokan's voice crackled over the comm. Contact. They're landing. Multiple pods, heavy weapon signatures. Here we go. The sound of plasma fire echoed through the corridors, distant but getting closer. Pixun's defensive systems activated. Sealed doors, redirected atmosphere, gravity fluctuations designed to disorient. The Ulalis were fast, though. Faster than they should have been. 4 minutes, the construct said calmly, as if it wasn't listening to a firefight happening somewhere above them. More plasma fire, an explosion that shook the walls. Ulokan's voice, steady and professional. Falling back to secondary position. They're bringing up heavy weapons. Kit's hand was beginning to ache, muscles cramping from the sustained contact. The knowledge in her head was screaming at her. Tactical data, Ulalik's behavioral patterns, probability calculations that weren't remotely encouraging. She pushed it all aside and focused on counting seconds. 3 minutes. Something massive impacted the facility's outer wall. The lights flickered. Pixun's voice, panicked. They're trying to breach directly through the structure. They know we're hiding something. 2 minutes, Ulokan. Contact. They're in the main corridor. Engaging. The comm filled with weapons fire, too close, too loud. Kit's vision was blurring, either from stress or from whatever the phasing process was doing to local reality. The chamber was starting to look translucent, like she could see through the walls into spaces that shouldn't exist. 1 minute. Footsteps in the corridor outside. Heavy, mechanical. Wrong. The Ulili had reached the inner chambers. 30 seconds. The door exploded inward. Through the smoke and debris, Kit saw them. Biomechanical nightmares that were equal parts organism and weapon, forms that hurt to look at directly. Ulokan was there, rifle blazing, putting himself between the Ulaliks and Kit. Pixun was triggering every defensive system they had left. Ixleth was holding a piece of ancient precursor technology like a club, because apparently even archaeologists had their limits. 10 seconds! The Ulali raised weapons. 5. Kit closed her eyes. The world shifted, reality folded, and the facility vanished. 3 weeks later, Kit sat in a debriefing room at the Galactic Union headquarters, telling a story nobody quite wanted to believe. The facility was gone, hidden in a pocket dimension she could access but couldn't easily explain. The team had survived. Barely. The Ulali had found nothing but empty rock and had eventually departed. Ixleth had filed his report. Pixun had submitted their data. Ulokan had received a commendation for bravery that he'd accepted with his usual enthusiasm for paperwork, which was to say none at all. And Kit had a vault full of ancient knowledge living in her head, coordinates to dozens of similar facilities scattered across multiple galaxies, and the distinct impression that her life had just become infinitely more complicated. So, the Union administrator said, clearly struggling with where to even begin, when you say the facility is hidden in a pocket dimension, I mean exactly that, Kit said, finishing the protein bar she'd been eating. Some things never changed. It's safe, it's accessible, and the knowledge is preserved, just like the Ulmati intended. And you're the only one who can access it. That's how genetic locks work. Yes. The administrator looked like they wanted to argue, to demand, to insist that this was too important for one individual to control. But they'd seen the reports. They knew what the Ulili could do. And maybe, just maybe, they were starting to understand why the precursors had designed things this way. "This isn't over," the administrator said finally. "No," Kit agreed, thinking of the other vaults, the other inheritors who might be out there, the Ulli still hunting through the dark. "It's really not." But that was a problem for another day. For now, she had a team to keep alive, a cosmic inheritance to figure out, and a granola bar to finish. Priorities.